2025 Kawasaki ZX4RR 6,000 mile review. Let's go.
Like a model, tastes like juice. Take my kids and put them all on you. It's crazy. I'm thinking about go half on a baby, but the pull-out gang save me. I'm a lion, you can't tame me. What you think about having J, little baby?
Alright guys, 2025 Kawasaki Ninja ZX4RR. This is the 6,000 mile review. I am right above that, but let's talk about it. We're going to talk about the pros, the cons, and whether or not you should or should not buy this. So to start, this bike is unique. There is nothing in the American market so far that is even similar to this. If I'm not mistaken, this is the only 4-cylinder 400cc motorcycle, and it is just wow. I've been telling people this is the best bike ever made, and I will fully support that and die on the hill for that. There's a couple reasons. This bike gets compared a lot to the Ninja 400 and the now Ninja 500, and there's a pretty good reason for it. Considering this has a 399cc displacement, and so did the Ninja 400, and the Ninja 500 is slightly above that at around 451, which is often why this motorcycle is compared to those two. You can really kind of think of the ZX4R as like the Pro and Pro Max of an iPhone. So like the Ninja 400 or 500 would be like just a regular Ninja, and then the Pro or Pro Max would be this, the ZX4R or RR. I would argue that the single R is just the Pro version, and the RR is the Pro Max version. The RR has the quick shifter, and I believe the single R does not. And that is huge because it's only a couple $100s more. So it doesn't really make sense to me why you would not get that, especially considering the price point. Now, the biggest con I get about this motorcycle is the price, especially compared to the engine size. So yes, the biggest problem is the price here, and I will fully admit this is a little high for the price. And especially that power to price ratio is really not that good, because for about $2,000 more, you can get a ZX6R, which has crazy amount of power, especially compared to something like this. So with that being said, you really just can't compare this because this is in its own class. Nothing in the American markets can compete with this because it's by itself. Now we'll start with the biggest pro. The absolute biggest pro by far is the fact that you can use every single gear and not have to worry about severely breaking the law. All right, almost just died, but that's cool. So the best part about this bike is the fact that you can use every single gear and actually have fun on this. Versus a bike like a 6R, once you're past third gear, you're basically always breaking the law. Which to me, if I'm buying a bike, I want to be able to use the full potential. Now, if you're looking for a street bike or something like that, that is a totally different game. Because if you're like me, the nearest track is about 3 to 4 hours away. So buying a track weapon is not really ideal because it's just so far away and so expensive. So if you're like me, you're looking more for a motorcycle that has all the street leisure with all the bells and whistles or something fun that could be used on the track, like this, like a quick shifter and advanced brakes, dual brakes, advanced suspension, all these kind of things, which the ZX4R has. Another fun part about this bike is that it is just comfortable relative to a sports bike. I actually had the option between a 6R and 10R versus this, and I ended up going with this. And I know a lot of you guys are thinking, why on earth would you do that? Well, fun is different from person to person. And to me, going 180 miles an hour in a straight line is not fun. Don't get me wrong, it's cool. I love seeing those videos all over Instagram and YouTube, but it just doesn't really interest me, so that really wasn't an option for me. Plus, they're a lot heavier, and I know they're a lot more expensive too. When you look into like bikes like liter bikes, you're probably looking in like the 20 miles per gallon range, versus here I'm getting around 50. But I can't express how comfortable this bike is. It is just absolutely amazing. Bikes like a 6R and a 10R, you're basically lying down like you're doing the Superman. But with this bike, nope, you don't have that problem at all. Now, some of you guys may be thinking, oh, well, this comfortable for me. Well, for reference, I'm about 5'8", 5'9", 150. So, I'm a short king, let's just put it like that. So, this bike, those bigger bikes don't really fit me that well. And especially at like low maneuverability, it doesn't really appease me because it's so uncomfortable and difficult to maintain versus something like this. Now, the engine of this, if you probably clicked on this video, this is probably one of the main reasons why you are considering this bike. This inline 4-cylinder is where you get that screamer sound. And it's kind of adorable because since it's a 4-cylinder 400cc, it's really high pitched compared to something like a 600 or even a liter bike. You might hear a lot of people call these baby screamers, And it's really funny because, like I said, it's high pitched, so it's a lot more adorable and cuter than something else. But it still sounds way better than a 2 or 3 cylinder bike. I've owned this bike for a little less than a year now, and I ride this at least 2 or 3 times a week. I just have a blast on this. I can't recommend this bike enough to everybody. Some of you guys may not care about this, but the uniqueness of this is something that I like. You know, we all know the R7s, we all know the R9s, we all know the 6Rs, we all know the Aprilia bikes. But this, I think I've met 1 or 2 people total that's also had this bike. And to me, that's pretty cool, because you do end up getting a lot of questions and a lot more interest, and it's kind of unique as well. And funny enough, with that 4-cylinder sound, I've cranked it a couple times, and a lot of people are like, oh, what bike is this? Is that a 600? Is that a 1000? What is this? And I'm like, no, it's a 400. And they're like, 400? How? It sounds nothing like a 400. What 400 is that? And I get all sorts of, and then we go into an hour-long talk on how this bike is the best and all that kind of stuff. And the quick shifter on this is just absolutely ridiculous. So if I wanted to, I could just no-hand this. And it sounds absolutely ridiculous. It's just so smooth and it works so well. I've ridden a couple bikes that have quick shifters, but for some reason it'll be like only in the up direction or down direction, and that was really strange to me. Oh, there goes my girlfriend. And she's on a Ninja 500. Now, one thing to note about this bike, since it has 4 cylinders, the torque is very small on here. You're looking at like the mid-20 range, which is honestly pathetic, especially for this price range in the $10,000 before all the fees and everything. One thing to note as well, even with this low torque, I can still get little hops like this, like. So I can still get it up. It's just not worth it to wheelie right now. I'm actually working on that. I got a crash cage for my Grom, and that's going to be my stunt bike because I'm absolutely not testing it on this. I probably spent around $12,000-13,000 total on this. My next upgrade for sure will be the ECU flash, and that will be coming at the end of the month. So stay tuned for that, and we'll have all sorts of updates on that. I plan to do some videos like speed comparison, pull comparison, G acceleration. I'll have an entire breakdown of everything for you guys. But I just can't get enough of that screaming sound, that quick shift scream. It's just, you can't believe it. And some people may complain, oh, it sounds way faster than it actually is. And it's like, okay, yeah, if that's your main priority, sure. But for the majority of people, it just doesn't make sense. And it's kind of like an insurance method as well, because the slower you go, or like this bike limits you so you can't really speed too much. I say too much, but you can still hit 100 in third gear, which is absolutely ridiculous. But compared to like a 6R or 10Rs. So keep that in mind. Everything is relative here. But it all comes back to that same topic, the price point of this bike. Yeah, it's pretty rough, I can't lie. New, it's around $10,000 for the double R version. And you can argue, is this worth it? I'm going to say yes, of course. Because duh, this is my dream bike. But I can understand from a power to dollar ratio as well. Because for $4,000 or $5,000 left, you can get a Ninja 500 like this right here, which has more torque and a higher engine size. But you don't get things like the quick shifter and the screaming sound and the technology as well. That's another thing as well. This bike also has a sports mode on here. I'll show a picture on the screen. So it looks like this. Basically it's a track mode, and essentially just shows your RPM. And in a little small box, you have your speed. And what's kind of interesting, it doesn't tell you your gas or how much gas you have. So like I'll be in track mode, and then I'll go back to normal mode like this, and then I'll notice I'm at 1 bar and it's flashing. I'm like, oh, that would be nice to know. The flash does let you know in track mode, but I don't want to get to that point, you know what I mean? It just doesn't really make sense to me. So I believe my biggest trip with this was a 5-hour round trip. I went from my area to around Panama City Beach in Florida, actually to grab a MacBook for my girlfriend, and we went nonstop and had a blast, absolute blast. You really don't start hurting to around the 3-hour mark in my experience. That's me. I enjoy riding this bike. I think it's very comfortable. I haven't had any problems, but you may find it different. Listen to this. See, it's stuff like that where On stuff like a 400 or a Ninja 500, you just can't do that. And it's so much fun. It's absolutely ridiculous. Something from a little 400, it's so much fun. I just love it so much. One thing as well, the gas on this is really nice. I get 50 miles per gallon, which is pretty good. I did have a Ninja 500 before this, and I was getting around 70-ish, I believe. And that was nice, don't get me wrong. But it's a small sacrifice for the benefits of this bike. It's also crazy to me how this is considered a beginner bike, yet you can still go 100 miles an hour in third gear, which to me is ridiculous. Because if you look at it from like a normal person's point of view, that is not really beginner at all. Beginner to me, a true beginner, is something like a Honda Grom or Z125. I like the European system better than the American, where you can just hop on anything as soon as you get your license. I like the progression from small, medium to large. I think it makes the most sense. It would prevent a lot of deaths as well. Now, this bike does have Bluetooth, which is really funny, through the Kawasaki app. So really interesting. It shows you things like your track and how many miles you did. But my favorite one is it shows you how much gas is in your bike, which is kind of strange but cool because, I mean, it's right here on the dash. I don't know who the target audience is, or maybe I'm not understanding the purpose of that feature, but you guys tell me. One of the downsides of this bike, I think that was a miss, is this bike is way heavier than it should be. It makes no sense. So for reference, this bike is around a little over 400 pounds, which makes no sense because bikes like the BMW S1K, which is a literal liter bike, weighs about the same as this. I don't know what the engineers were doing or what is different, but to me, that doesn't make any sense at all. Because a Ninja 500, for example, it's really light. I believe it's about 50, 60, 70 pounds lighter, and it has a bigger engine size. So I don't know, I think I'm missing something there, but that makes no sense to me. So I think if Kawasaki dropped the price by around $2,000 and made the bike lighter, this bike would be an absolute home run. If I had to rate it into different categories, for price, I would rate this 2.5 out of 5. For fun, this is absolutely no doubt a 5 out of 5. For practicality, I would give this a 4 out of 5 because for long distances, this could be pretty uncomfortable. And the dollar per value, I would also give this a 2.5 out of 5. This is one of its weak spots. And for tech, I would give this a 4 out of 5. Just one thing that's missing here is that it seems like the dash updates like every second or half second. So for example, notice how it just skips all the numbers. It doesn't go, for example, 56, 57, 58. It'll go from like 55 to 59. I don't know why. That's weird to me. I'm not really a fan of that. But yeah, that is my 2025 Kawasaki ZX4RR 6,000 mile review. Let me know what you guys think, guys.